Welcome to this trip through one of the most disturbing cases in New Orleans history. Before we start, please leave a comment telling me where you are and what time it is when you listen to this narration. We want to know where and when these documented stories are getting to people. The Garden District of New Orleans is a sign of Southern wealth, with its oak-lined streets whispering secrets from a different time. But there is a darker history behind these grand antebellum mansions that the city has tried very hard to forget. This is the story of Benjamin Cole's plantation, which was just west of what is now Magazine Street. It tells the events of 1,842 that would stay hidden for 50 years. According to records from Street Charles Avenue Church, Benjamin Cole came to New Orleans in 1834 after making a lot of money through shipping interests in Charleston. The records show that he bought 7 acres of prime land and started building what people at the time called a residence of particular distinction. Cole's business dealings got him into the upper class of New Orleans. Society. The Louisiana Courier's society pages reported that he went to at least 24 social events in 1835 alone. Cole's property was different from the others in the area, not only because of its beautiful architecture, but also because of the strange way the quarters for the enslaved people were set up. Cole built the quarters in a hidden hollow behind a grove of cypress trees, about 400 yards from the main house. This is different from the usual way, where the quarters would be visible from the main house. The surveyor's paperwork filed with the Orleans Parish Land Records Office gives us this information. Benjamin Cole married Anna Lewis, the daughter of a well-known family in Baton Rouge, in the spring of 1836. The Daily Picayune announced their marriage and called the bride a woman of great beauty and taste. The couple would not have any children, which would later be important to our story. According to all official reports, the Cole plantation ran smoothly until the fall of 1842. Tax records from that year show that 28 people lived on the property as slaves. Most of them worked on the grounds and in the house. Elizabeth Thornton, a frequent guest at the Coles' elaborate dinner parties, wrote in her journals that they were very tasteful events, but the servants were unusually quiet. Something very strange happened on the morning of the 17th of October, 1842. Benjamin Cole called the police to say that everyone in his slave quarters had disappeared overnight, according to a report filed with the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office. Deputy Sheriff Thomas Wilkins wrote the report. He said that Cole said he had gone to bed at the usual time, but his kitchen manager woke him up at dawn to tell him that no one could be found in the quarters. People first thought this was a mass escape, which had never happened on this scale in the area before. The Orleans Parish Gazette said, "Mr. Cole's property has experienced a most unusual disappearance, with upwards of 25 Negroes having absconded in the night. A search party made up of nearby plantation owners and local lawmen was formed, but they didn't find a single footprint leading away from the property." It's not just the fact that the quarters went missing that makes this case so disturbing. It's also the state in which they were found. Sheriff Wilkins' report says that each home was left in a state that suggested no plans to leave. Things like clothes and meals were still in place, and in one case, a piece of clothing was found half-finished. The report also says that there were no open doors, and that the ground around the quarters showed no signs of a quick exit or a fight. There were rumors going around in the community. Reverend Jonathan Pierce, who was the minister at Street Charles Avenue Church, wrote in his diary that Brother Cole seems deeply affected by the loss of his property, though his wife keeps her composure, which some find strange. This entry, from October 23, 1842, is one of the few that talks about Anna Cole's reaction to the event at the time. The official investigation was over in 3 weeks, and there was no sign of foul play or any leads on where the missing people might be. The case was called a mysterious absconding. Benjamin Cole filed an insurance claim for his lost property, and it was approved in December of that year. According to parish construction permits, the quarters were torn down soon after, and the area was turned into a decorative garden. Things seemed to go back to normal at the Cole plantation. Benjamin's shipping business kept doing well, and Anna stayed involved in New Orleans society. But people who visited their home often noticed small changes. Elizabeth Thornton wrote in her journal in February 1843 that the Coles no longer entertain as they once did. The house seems oppressively silent, and Anna's once vibrant demeanor has taken on a quality I can only describe as watchful horror. If it weren't for what happened almost 50 years later, the coal plantation's history might have stayed a secret forever. James Harrington, a well-known doctor in New Orleans, bought the property in 1891. It had changed hands several times since Benjamin Cole died in 1867. Dr. Harrington wanted to fix up the old mansion, which had fallen into some disrepair. Workers found something disturbing while they were doing these repairs. The Daily Picayune reported on the 12th of July, 1891, that digging for a new drainage system uncovered a sealed chamber under what used to be an ornamental garden on the property. The article goes on to say that the only way to get to this room, which was about 30 feet by 40 feet in size, was through a narrow passage that had been hidden on purpose under a decorative fountain. The workers found things in this room that can't be explained. The coroner's report from the 15th of July, 1891, said that there were 27 bodies in the room. Because the underground space was so dry, the bodies were in very good condition. The most disturbing thing about these remains was how they were arranged. They were scattered throughout the room in poses that suggested they were doing normal things, like sitting at tables or doing other tasks. Dr. William Blackburn, the coroner, wrote in his report that no obvious cause of death can be determined for any of the subjects. There are no signs of violence or struggle. In fact, the expressions preserved on some of the faces suggest they were unaware of their fate even in its final moments. The report concluded that the deaths likely happened at the same time and suddenly, but the cause was still a mystery. The news of the discovery shook up New Orleans society. A lot of the city's older families, who knew the Coles well, didn't want to say anything in public. The Daily Picayune said that some well-known people have said that the chamber should be sealed again without further investigation, citing respect for the dead. Even with these pressures, the authorities went ahead with their investigation. A journal was one of the personal items found in the chamber. It was kept in a sealed metal box. This journal, which is thought to be by Anna Cole because it looks like her handwriting in church records, has entries from 1840 to 1843. On the 20th of July, 1891, the Daily Picayune published the last pages of this document, even though many well-known families protested. The entry from the 16th of October, 1842, the day before the disappearance, is especially scary. Benjamin has finished getting ready. He promises me that this last experiment will put an end to the voices that have bothered him since he was a child. I have helped as needed, but my conscience gets heavier with each passing hour. The substance has been added to their dinner, just as the doctor said. I watched from the window as they went back to their rooms. Now we wait. This journal entry suggested that both Benjamin and Anna Cole were involved in the tragedy that happened to those 27 people, but it's still not clear what the substance and experiment were. The authorities took the journal and, according to official records, sent it to the Orleans Parish Archives. But when researchers tried to get to it in 1922, they found that it was missing from the collection. More investigation of the chamber turned up more disturbing information. The police report says that the room had a complicated ventilation system, which suggests that it was meant to be used for a long time. Even more terrifying, investigators found proof that at least some of the victims may have been trapped in the sealed area for days or even weeks. Along with food supplies, there were also containers that looked like they had held water. Dr. James Harrington, who owned the property when it was found, had a memorial put up on the grounds. However, the new owners asked for it to be taken down just 3 years later. Dr. Harrington told the Daily Picayune in 1893 that he had to sell the property because of certain disturbances of an unexplainable nature, but he wouldn't say anything more about them. Dr. Theodore Reynolds, a chemistry professor at Tulane University, was interested in the case. Dr. Reynolds wrote a paper in 1892 after looking at the coroner's report that said the victims may have been given an experimental drug that was meant to put them in a death-like state of suspended animation. His theory posited that Benjamin Cole had not intended to inflict permanent harm, but rather that his experiment had encountered a catastrophic failure. Most of his coworkers thought this theory was just a guess and didn't take it seriously. What makes the theory of chemical experimentation stronger is a set of invoices that were found in Benjamin Cole's business papers during the investigation. These invoices, from a drugstore in Philadelphia, showed that the buyer bought a number of rare chemical compounds in the months before October 1842. One of these was a large amount of a substance called E-extract, which is still unknown. An investigation into Benjamin Cole's personal library, which was catalogued during the investigation, found an unusual collection of books on human physiology, chemical compounds, and a few volumes on how the ancient Egyptians mummified their dead. Officer Henry Merritt's inventory showed that Mr. Cole had read these books a lot, as many passages were marked and written in his own hand. A letter found with Benjamin Cole's former business partner, William Tanner, is the most convincing proof of Cole's mental state. Cole writes in this letter, which is dated the 3rd of August 1842, "My experiments have progressed to a stage where practical application must be considered. The preservation of consciousness beyond the traditional boundaries of life remains my ultimate goal." Anna expresses reservation, yet she understands the significance of this work. What is still not clear is why Benjamin Cole would hide what he did by telling the police that someone had gone missing. In her 1962 study of the case, historian Margaret Sinclair put forward the idea that Cole's experiment produced results that were so shocking and unexpected that he couldn't bear to face what he had done. The false report of an escape gave him a good excuse and let him literally bury what he had done. In September 1891, the investigation into the chamber and what was inside it suddenly stopped. A short notice in the Daily Picayune said that the case was closed by the mayor's office and that all of the remains would be buried in a common grave at Street Louis Cemetery No. 3. There are no markers or records of this burial in the cemetery's records, which has led some researchers to wonder if the remains were ever properly buried. After the discovery, the Cole mansion changed hands a lot over the years. Between 1891 and 1910, the property had at least 7 different owners, and none of them lived there for more than 3 years. There were rumors of strange things happening on the estate, but officials said these stories were just sensationalism based on the property's dark past. In a 1905 interview with the Daily Picayune, a former resident said they heard the sounds of several voices whispering to each other coming from the sealed area where the chamber had been found. This resident also said that they felt like someone was watching them when they were alone in the house and that things were moving around when no one was there. In the end, the Cole mansion was torn down in 1912 to make room for new homes. During the demolition process, workers reported discovering a small room concealed within the walls of the master bedroom. The Daily Picayune published a story by the foreman that said this room only had a desk, a chair, and a mirror. There were handwritten notes all over the walls that were called incomprehensible formulas and diagrams. A fire broke out before these could be properly recorded, destroying the rest of the building and everything inside. There are now several homes along what is now Prytania Street on the land where the coal plantation used to be. People who live there have sometimes said that strange things have happened, but none of these reports have been officially recorded. In 1958, while workers were putting in a swimming pool at one of these properties, they found what looked like a piece of the original foundation of the slave quarters. They said that the stone felt very cold to the touch, even though it was summer. In 1968, historian Dr. Elizabeth Montgomery tried to find Anna Cole's journal for more research, which brought the Cole case back into the public eye. She found a descendant of Deputy Sheriff Thomas Wilkins who had kept unofficial copies of some documents related to the case. One of these was a transcript of Anna Cole's last journal entry, which was dated the 3rd of March 1843 and had never been made public. This entry says, "I can't take this burden anymore. Benjamin still thinks his experiment worked, and that those poor souls are now in some state between life and death. He talks about consciousness preserved, minds aware, but bodies frozen. He goes to the chamber every night. Sure, he can hear their thoughts. Last night, he said they were talking to him and begging for release. I'm afraid his mind is lost. More terribly, I'm afraid he may be right." While Montgomery was working in the Louisiana State Archives, she had a stroke that cut short her research. Her co-workers said she had just found a file with Benjamin Cole's private letters in it. This file was reported missing during a later inventory, and it has never been found. Montgomery got better, but she said she couldn't remember what she had found in the hours before her stroke. During renovations to the Street Charles Avenue Church in 1962, workers found a hidden compartment behind the altar that held a sealed box. There was a letter inside that was said to have been written by Reverend Jonathan Pierce in 1843. The letter, which was sent to his successor, told a troubling story. I have heard Benjamin Cole's confession, but it does not comfort me. He talks about souls trapped between worlds and consciousness preserved while the body appears lifeless. He thinks he has found the secret to eternal life through a very unnatural means. I cannot forgive such sins, nor can I report them without bringing destruction upon this parish. I leave this testament sealed so that future generations may know the truth. Historians have questioned the credibility of this letter because the paper looks newer than what one would expect from a letter from 1843. Dr. Robert Chambers of Tulane University did an analysis in 1964 and found that the ink and other parts are consistent with materials that were available in the middle of the 19th century. The letter is now part of the private collection of the Louisiana Historical Society. In October 1842, what happened at the Cole plantation? The simplest explanation that Benjamin Cole, maybe with Anna's help, drugged and then buried 27 people as part of a crazy experiment seems almost too horrible to think about. But the proof clearly points in this direction. It's not clear if Cole thought his victims were dead when he hid them, or if, as Anna's last journal entry suggests, he thought they were in some kind of suspended animation. When you think about the fact that Cole's victims might have been aware of what was happening to them while they were being buried, the case gets even darker. The way the bodies were arranged in lifelike poses, the food and water that were there, and the complex ventilation system all point to the fact that Cole may have wanted them to live for a while. The coroner's note that many seem to be unaware of their fate, even at the end, supports the idea that they were kept in a different state of mind. It's possible that the most disturbing thing about Anna's journal is that it suggests Benjamin kept going to the hidden room for months after she went missing. What happened during these visits? Did he watch his victims, talk to them, keep doing his experiments? These questions still don't have answers, and neither do the details of Benjamin Cole's death in 1867. The official cause of death was listed as apoplexy, but there were still rumors that he killed himself. Anna Cole lived alone on her family's property in Baton Rouge for almost 20 years after her husband died. People in the area say that she didn't talk much and never had visitors. There wasn't much news about her death in 1885, and only a short obituary mentioned it. When the executor of her estate got there to take care of her business, they said they found her personal papers already burned in the fireplace. Since the hidden chamber was found, many different ideas have been put forward to explain what happened to Cole. Some historians think that Benjamin was trying to find ways to keep people alive during yellow fever outbreaks, which were common in New Orleans at the time. Some people have suggested darker reasons, saying that Cole was influenced by obscure philosophical texts that pushed people to try to become immortal through experiments. No matter what Benjamin Cole's reasons were, the facts are still very troubling. 27 people went missing from his property in 1842 and were only found in a specially built underground chamber 50 years later. The evidence strongly suggests that they died as a result of chemical experiments that Benjamin Cole hid through a complicated lie. The Cole case is one of the most disturbing things that has ever happened in New Orleans, which has a long history of dark and tragic events. It reminds us of the terrible price paid by people who were seen as property rather than people, and of how far people will go to get forbidden knowledge. The hidden room under the decorative garden has been sealed off and built over for a long time, but the questions it raised still need to be answered. There is nothing left of the Cole mansion except for the foundations that are now underneath modern homes. But people who live on Prytania Street sometimes see strange things, like cold spots that stay cold even in the heat of summer, the sound of whispered conversations when no one is there, and most often, dreams of being trapped in a dark space while awake but unable to move. Authorities say these reports are just urban legends based on the area's history, but they keep coming up. In 1959, while building a garage at a house on the street, workers found what looked like a metal box. They said that the box only had one thing in it: a small glass vial with a dark substance inside. The box and its contents vanished from the construction site before anyone could tell the police about the find. The worker who first found the box had unexplained seizures for several months after that and said he saw people frozen in time, aware but unable to cry out. The last official investigation into the Cole case was done by Professor James Harrison of Tulane University in 1967. The main goal of his research was to figure out what chemicals Benjamin Cole might have used in his experiments by looking at the descriptions in Anna's journal and the invoices from Philadelphia. Harrison posited that Cole had synthesized a compound from plant alkaloids recognized for their paralytic properties. The Journal of Historical Toxicology turned down his research paper because it used methods that were too speculative. Harrison continued his research on his own, and it is said that he tried to recreate the compound based on what he learned from Cole's work. Harrison didn't show up for his scheduled lectures in February of 1968. When co-workers went to his house, they found him sitting at his desk, unresponsive but still alive. Medical reports say that he stayed in this catatonic state for 11 days before waking up all of a sudden. After he got better, Harrison quit his job at Tulane and turned down all requests to talk about his research or experience. The Cole case is still officially closed, and the deaths are still listed as having unknown causes in parish records. The Louisiana Historical Society was said to have kept the case files, but researchers who tried to find them in 1970 and again in 1982 were unable to do so. The curator said that the files were either lost during the reorganization or taken by people who are not known. What should we think about this dark time in New Orleans' past? The evidence indicates a heinous crime perpetrated in a distorted quest for knowledge, yet uncertainties persist. If Benjamin Cole's experiment entailed inducing a death-like state, could it be that his victims were not actually deceased at the time of entombment? Is it possible that they were in a state of suspended animation, aware but unable to move, for a while before death finally took them? The way the bodies are arranged in lifelike poses makes it seem like Cole was making a tableau of daily life, frozen in time. Anna's last journal entry suggests that Benjamin's last years were full of pain, no matter what he thought he had done. Did guilt eventually win out over his scientific curiosity, or did he still see his victims as just subjects in his big experiment? We may never know the whole truth about what happened that night in October 1842 or in the secret room in the years that followed. Like many other dark times in history, the Cole case has been forgotten by most people. The homes along Prytania Street, where the plantation used to be, are now valuable homes in the Garden District. Most people have forgotten about the tragedy that happened there, but maybe something from the past is still in the soil and stone of that place. People who live there talk about strange dreams, the feeling of being watched, and whispers that are just out of reach of hearing. People in New Orleans, where the past and present are closer together than in most places, often dismiss these kinds of stories as part of the city's colorful folklore. But for people who have looked into the Cole case in depth, these repeated reports take on a more disturbing meaning. They say that whatever Benjamin Cole did that night in the fall still has effects today, like a ripple in the fabric of reality that has never completely gone away. Anna Cole's own journal entry from the 1st of November, 1842, may be the best epitaph for this sad event. It says, "What has been done cannot be undone. Those who were silenced remain silent, yet I feel the weight of their mute accusation. Benjamin speaks of scientific triumph, but I see only the hubris of playing God. There are boundaries humans were never meant to cross, doors never meant to be opened. We have stepped through such a door, and I fear we can never return." The true horror of the Cole case is not only in what Benjamin and Anna did, but also in the questions that their actions still bring up. What is the essence of consciousness? Is it possible for it to exist outside of the usual limits of life and death? And the most frightening thing of all is that awareness could stay even when all signs of life have stopped. Science is still trying to answer these questions, and the events at the Cole plantation force us to face them in their most disturbing form. The old oak trees in New Orleans' Garden District cast long shadows over Prytania Street as night falls. The houses are quiet and beautiful, and they don't give any hint of the bad things that happened here in the past. But for those who know the story and have looked into the broken records and testimonies, there is still a sense of unease that time cannot fully erase. There are 27 souls buried beneath the manicured lawns and historic homes. Their last moments are a mystery that is too dark to fully understand. Maybe some lines are better left unbroken. Some things are better not known. Reverend Pierce wrote in his secret letter, "There are sins for which no absolution exists in this world or the next. May God have mercy on the souls of everyone who was affected by this terrible event. And may the truth of it stay hidden deeper than any grave. While working on her thesis about antebellum architecture in New Orleans in 1969, a graduate student named Margaret Fletcher came across a mention of the Cole case. She was interested, so she started putting together the bits and pieces of information that were still available about the event. A lot of official records had mysteriously vanished from archives, but Fletcher was able to piece together a more complete picture of what happened after the hidden chamber was found by reading personal letters, newspaper articles, and talking to older people who lived in the Garden District. Fletcher's unpublished research notes, which were given to Tulane University's special collections in 1971, say that at least 3 of the workers who first entered the underground chamber in 1891 died in strange ways within a year of the discovery. The first, Joseph Landry, was found in bed with his eyes open but not responding, which was similar to the state that Professor Harrison later experienced. He never woke up and died 17 days later. The second person, Thomas Miller, went missing 3 months after the discovery and was never seen again. Robert Jenkins, the third person, was said to have nightmares so bad that he was sent to the Louisiana State Asylum, where he died 6 months later from injuries he caused himself. Fletcher's notes include a transcript of an interview with Dr. Samuel Graves, the doctor who was taking care of Jenkins at the asylum. Graves, who was in his 92nd at the time of the interview in 1969, said that Jenkins was afraid of falling asleep and would talk about 27 pairs of eyes that were always watching him. The most disturbing thing was that Jenkins kept saying he could hear all of their thoughts, all at once, begging to be set free. What happened to these workers? Did they just lose it because of how scary their discovery was? Or did they find something more real? Fletcher's research indicates the latter. She mentions a journal kept by Dr. William Blackburn, the coroner who looked at the body, in her notes. This journal, which his family kept instead of giving it to the authorities, has a disturbing observation that is not included in his public report. Upon first contact with the subjects, 3 of my assistants reported a sensation of extreme cold passing through their bodies, followed by what one described as voices, countless voices, all speaking at once. I myself experienced no such phenomenon, yet cannot dismiss their consistent testimony. Fletcher's research also found proof that Anna Cole may have tried to undo what her husband had started. Fletcher discovered a letter from Anna among the papers of Father Michael Donovan, who served at St. Charles Avenue Church from 1848 to 1860. In the letter, dated August 1849, Anna asks for a blessing of the grounds, especially the garden area, to provide rest to those who cannot find it naturally. The letter does not directly mention the hidden chamber, but it does suggest that Anna was becoming more worried that something unnatural was still happening on the property. One of the most important things that Fletcher found was a partial manuscript that was said to be by Benjamin Cole himself. William Tanner, Cole's former business partner, had these pages among his personal belongings. They seem to be part of a larger work called Observations on the Persistence of Consciousness. The manuscript, dated July 1842, has a disturbing passage that says, "My preliminary experiments with animals have proven most enlightening." The compound, when given in the right amount, puts the body in a state where all functions seem to stop while the mind stays active. Subjects are aware of their surroundings but can't move or talk in the usual ways. Most importantly, this state seems to be able to last indefinitely, as long as the right conditions are met. If Cole's writing is to be taken at face value, it suggests a horrifying possibility that his victims may have been conscious within that sealed chamber, not just for days or weeks, but potentially for years or even decades. The advanced ventilation system, the lifelike arrangement of bodies, and the provision of food and water that would never be eaten all suggest that Cole did not create a tomb, but a controlled space for long-term observation. But what did Benjamin Cole want to see? Fletcher's research indicates that Cole cultivated a profound interest in what he referred to as the boundaries of mortal existence subsequent to a near-death experience during the yellow fever outbreak in 1837. His private library, which was organized after the chamber was found, had many books on ancient Egyptian ideas about the afterlife, Hindu ideas about consciousness, and modern European experiments with galvanism and reanimation. Fletcher hypothesizes that Cole thought he had found a way to keep consciousness alive beyond the normal limits of life, a state of being neither fully alive nor truly dead. His experiment was not solely to induce this state, but to examine its long-term consequences. Did consciousness last forever? Could it exist without a body that works? Could it eventually go beyond being a physical thing? These questions may appear to originate from a disturbed mind. However, Fletcher discovered evidence indicating that Cole's work had garnered attention from specific scientific circles prior to the events of 1842. Cole had letters from Dr. Frederick Mortimer, a Philadelphia doctor who was known for his controversial research into states of suspended animation. In a letter from March 1842, Mortimer writes, "Your theories about separating the mind from the body, while not widely accepted, fit with what I've seen during extreme cases of catalepsy. I'm looking forward to the results of your ongoing experiments." In December 1970, Margaret Fletcher's investigation came to an abrupt end. Tulane University records show that she asked to see some restricted items in the Louisiana Historical Society's collection that had to do with the Cole case. 3 days later, she dropped out of her graduate program and is said to have left New Orleans. University officials tried to get in touch with her, but they were unsuccessful. Her landlady gave Tulane her research materials, saying that Fletcher had left in the middle of the night, leaving most of her things behind. In 1972, workers who were fixing up one of the Prytania Street homes that had been built on top of the old Cole property found a small metal box buried under the foundation. There was only one piece of paper inside, a letter written by Anna Cole, according to experts. The letter, which was simply addressed to those who come after, had a disturbing warning. What lies beneath cannot be disturbed without consequence. 27 souls remain suspended between worlds by my husband's hand. I have tried to grant them peace through prayer and ritual, but their consciousness persists. They are aware, they are suffering, and they are hungry for release. Seal what has been opened, forget what has been found. Some states of being were never meant for human experience. Researchers tried to look at this letter in 1980, but it was missing from the Louisiana Historical Society's collection. The only proof that it existed is a picture taken by the homeowner before they gave the document to the police. After Fletcher stopped working on the Cole case, it faded from public view once more. There were some mentions of it in books about the history of New Orleans or collections of Southern Gothic stories, but they were always minor footnotes. And the details got more and more wrong over time, and with each telling. But for the few who kept looking into the case, strange patterns began to show up. Dr. James Holbrook, a parapsychologist who tried to look into the case in 1983, said that many people who looked into the Cole incident had similar experiences. Vivid dreams of being trapped in darkness, feelings of being watched, and in some cases, auditory hallucinations described as many voices speaking all at once, just below the threshold of comprehension. Holbrook himself stopped his research after having what he called severe night terrors that lasted for months. In 1988, while making major repairs to one of the Prytania Street properties, workers found a piece of old foundation that looked like it came from the original Cole mansion. Their foreman said that the stone felt unusually cold even though it was summer. This is very similar to reports from 1958. One worker's story was even more disturbing. After handling a certain stone, he had a vision of a room full of people sitting perfectly still, their eyes following my every move. This worker left the site and refused to come back. There were no more problems during the renovation, but the new owners of the property reported strange things happening almost as soon as they moved in. In an interview published in the Times-Picayune's New Orleans Mysteries section in 1990, the family said they had cold spots that persist regardless of the season, sounds of whispered conversations with no clear source, and most disturbingly, times when time seemed to stop, moments when everything freezes and a deep silence falls, lasting for seconds or sometimes minutes. The family stayed in the house for only 7 months before selling it for a big loss. Later owners said they had similar but less serious problems. From 1990 to 1996, the property changed hands 3 times, which is not normal for the Garden District which is a popular area. Hurricane Allison caused a lot of flooding in some parts of New Orleans in 2001. The part of Prytania Street that was built over the old coal property was one of the places that was affected. Afterward, residents noticed something strange. A perfect circle of ground, about 40 feet wide, that stayed completely dry even though the area around it was wet. This circle was almost exactly where the underground chamber had been found 100 years earlier. Tests on soil samples from this area did not show any clear reason why it repels water. Louisiana State University's Department of Geological Sciences did an analysis and found that the soil composition was similar to that of nearby areas. The report did say that the samples had unusual thermal properties, maintaining a temperature several degrees below ambient regardless of external conditions. However, it did not explain why this was the case. A final disturbing chapter in the coal story was added in 2005, just months before Hurricane Katrina changed New Orleans forever. When construction workers were putting in new water lines along Prytania Street, they found what looked like a part of the original ventilation system for the underground chamber. One of the workers said in their report that they felt something grab his hand when they reached into the exposed section of pipe. They immediately pulled out and refused to work at the site again. City workers quickly covered the open space and changed the planned path of the water line. There was no official explanation, but people in the area heard sounds coming from the exposed pipe. They said they heard whispering voices, too many to count, all speaking at once. On the 29th of August 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. The destruction changed the city's physical and cultural landscape forever. The Louisiana Historical Society was one of the many buildings that were damaged or destroyed. It was where many of the remaining documents related to the coal case were kept. Flooding and mold destroyed these items and many other historical records. The coal case faded even more from people's minds during the years of rebuilding that followed. New Orleans had more important things to worry about than a mystery that had been around for 100 years, no matter how scary its implications were. But there are still questions for those who have looked closely at the case. What did Benjamin Cole do to those 27 people? Did their minds stay alive long after their bodies should have died? And the most worrying thing of all is whether some of that consciousness is still stuck under the beautiful homes on Prytania Street. The most recent event in this long and troubling story happened in 2017. While installing fiber optic cables in the Garden District, workers said that equipment near the old coal property was acting strangely. Engineers said that the digital signals were corrupted and had patterns too regular to be random interference, but not matching any known communication protocol. A sound technician who listened to audio recorded near the site said they found what sounded like human voices in the electronic noise, but this claim has never been confirmed by anyone else. The beautiful homes on Prytania Street today don't show any signs of the dark things that used to happen there. Tourists walk by, admiring the classic Southern architecture, but they don't know what might still be under their feet. The Cole Mansion is no longer there. The hidden room was sealed off and built over. The papers were lost or scattered over time. Still, there may be something left of the line that Benjamin Cole crossed, an echo of his horrible experiment, a ripple in the fabric of reality that is still there today. We can only hope that death finally freed the 27 people who died on that October night in 1842, since Benjamin Cole's experiment didn't. But the constant reports of strange things happening at the site point to a more worrying possibility: that some part of their consciousness is still stuck in that liminal state. Cole wanted to explore neither fully alive nor truly dead. As the sun sets in New Orleans and the shadows grow longer on Prytania Street, you might want to stop and listen. Maybe there's another sound just below the threshold of hearing, in the pauses between the sounds of the city and the heartbeats. It's a lot of voices talking at once, still waiting to be set free. The Cole case is truly horrifying, not just because of the act itself, which was horrible, but also because of the possibility that its effects will last forever. That the line Benjamin Cole crossed will always be crossed. And that some doors, once opened, can never be truly closed again. Some states of being were never meant for human experience. Anna Cole wrote in her last warning, "There are boundaries we were not meant to cross, knowledge we were not meant to possess." The tragedy of Benjamin Cole's victims is a clear reminder of the price paid when human hubris ignores these basic truths. The land where the coal plantation used to be is still privately owned and is now home to several beautiful homes. Some people stay for decades, while others leave after just a few months. Very few people know the whole story of what happened on that ground almost 200 years ago. That might be for the best. Some histories are too dark to face head-on. There are some things you shouldn't know. But in a city like New Orleans, history is never really gone. It seeps up through the soil, like groundwater, after it rains. What happened at the coal plantation in 1842 still has an effect today, though it may not be very strong. It is like a whisper from the underground chamber, where 27 people were trapped between life and death, their minds preserved beyond their natural limits by a terrible experiment by one man. There is still a disturbing question for those who have studied the Cole case in depth: if consciousness can really last beyond the normal limits of life, as Benjamin Cole thought, what happens to it when it is finally free? Does it just go away like smoke in the wind? Does it go on to whatever natural fate awaits all consciousness after death? Or could it endure in an alternative manifestation, molded by the trauma of its unnatural preservation? There are no answers to these questions that living minds can understand. Maybe the worst part of the Cole case is that it makes us think that there are states of being that are so far beyond our understanding that we can't even imagine them, let alone prepare for them. As night falls over New Orleans' Garden District, and the old oak trees cast long shadows across Prytania Street, the elegant homes are quiet, their windows glowing with warm light against the dark. Above the ground where Benjamin Cole did his terrible experiment, life goes on as it should. But maybe something else goes on in the quiet between heartbeats and the shadows between moments. A memory of consciousness that lives on beyond its normal limits. A ripple in reality that never fully goes away. Some people say that when the city finally sleeps and silence falls over Prytania Street in the middle of the night, you can hear a faint sound coming from under the well-kept lawns and historic homes. It's a lot of voices all at once, just below the level of understanding. They talk about darkness and awareness, about time that has no meaning, and about consciousness that has no body or release. They talk about Benjamin Cole's greatest success and worst failure, keeping the mind alive even after death. These are just stories for the people who live on Prytania Street. They are urban legends that came from the city's Gothic imagination. People who have looked into the Cole case know that these are more than just words. They are a warning that some limits are there for a reason, that some knowledge costs too much, and that some doors can never be completely closed again. The coal plantation is no longer there. Time, progress, and natural disasters have taken it away. The hidden room has been sealed off and built over. The only signs of its location are the occasional cold spot, the brief failure of electronic devices, and the whispered conversations that no one seems to hear. But maybe something of what Benjamin Cole did that fall night in 1842 still exists. A ripple in reality, a line crossed that can never be crossed again, and a terrible knowledge sought that can never be forgotten. There are sins for which no absolution exists in this world or the next, Reverend Pierce wrote in his secret letter. For the sake of those 27 souls, we hope he was wrong.